Good morning, everyone. Today I will be presenting Output 10, the final briefing on H.R. 69, the Illegal, Unreported, and Unregulated Fishing Enforcement Act of 2013. I'd like to start by thanking the faculty for taking the time to be here today, and I'd especially like to thank Dr. Cook for his invaluable guidance throughout this semester. And I also wanted to thank my workshop team for their incredible hard work and dedication throughout the semester, culminating in this output. So let's begin. Our agenda for today will begin by discussing illegal fishing, what the environmental effects are, and why it is a problem. Then we'll talk about the H.R. 69, how it is a solution to that problem. Then we'll discuss the implementation of H.R. 69, and for looking at the programs that exist now that can be used as models. And finally, we'll discuss measuring the success of H.R. 69. So let's talk about IUU fishing. IUU fishing is anyone who fishes without a permit, with a suspended permit, after a permit has been revoked, when a fisher fails to report their catch, with an unregulated vessel, equipment, or methods, or in marine reserves. So illegal fishing has a number of consequences, and some of the most critical include its effects on a loss of fish stocks, loss of biodiversity, which is the variety of organisms in an ecosystem, loss in ecosystem health, and an erosion in food security. So IUU fishing affects fish stocks because of its very nature. In calculations of how much of a resource there is, of any resource, if an unknown amount of that resource is taken, what's left can't be accurately measured, and that resource is in danger of diminishing faster than it can be replenished. So the calculation that's done by scientists for determining how many fish can be caught in a year and the stock will replenish itself is the maximum sustainable yield, or MSY. However, the regulation that's usually used is not MSY, but the policymaker-led legal maximum. And unfortunately, the legal maximum typically exceeds MSY, and thus using this number results in fish stock decline. So we can visualize the impact that IUU fishing has on fish stocks in this way. So let's pretend that this is all the fish alive in an ocean in 1 year, and within this green circle is all the fish caught that MSY accounts for. So we can see that we're still left with a lot of fish in the sea. But if we use the legal maximum instead, represented by the yellow circle, we lose quite a bit more of our chance that we fish sustainably that year. And when we take into account the IUU fishing that was done that year, we're left with a diminished fish stock. So if we can decrease IUU fishing, fish stocks will increase, causing an increase in biodiversity, which would boost ecosystem health, leading to greater food security. So why do we care about food security? So if we look at this map, each shade of green represents how dependent on protein from fish sources each country in the world is. And the darker the green, the more dependent that they are. So we can see that everywhere in the world is dependent on some degree on fish stocks. And this is especially true in Africa and Asia, where there aren't necessarily other food options. So is this a problem that we have to think about now? Yes, it is estimated that already 85% of global fish stocks have reached the point of being exploited or overfished. And if stocks aren't allowed to replenish, then they can result in species collapse. So this graph shows one estimate, and it says that already 30% of commercial seafood species have collapsed, which is the red line, and the projected long-term trend, the blue line, states that there could be 100% loss of global seafood species from species collapse by 2050 if no action is taken. So now that we know what we're up against, let's discuss H.R. 69 itself. The major goals of H.R. 69 is to strengthen enforcement mechanisms to stop illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing, and it intends to achieve these goals by amending 14 different existing acts. And these amendments intend to effect enough change to solve the problems that we just discussed by affecting the monitoring of illegal fishing by using technologies, increasing personnel, and placing offending vessels on centralized lists, by implementing and enforcing regulations that help curb IUU fishing, like limiting port privileges, requiring permits, and enforcing catch limits, and by imposing heavy sanctions against those who don't comply with the regulations. And these sanctions include heavy fines, stripping a fisher of his permit or property, and even jail time. So let's examine how HR 69 will fulfill the goal of curbing illegal fishing. So to do this, a number of programs and initiatives will need to be created and implemented to solve the 3 goals that we just discussed. So there are a number of programs that exist now that we could use as models. So let's go over the monitoring category first and bring in our blue box from the previous slide. There are a number of technologies used to track and monitor vessels, including the Vessel Monitoring System, or VMS, and the combined IUU vessel list is an ideal example of a standardizing list of offending vessels. To go a bit more in depth, VMS is a satellite-based, near real-time positional tracking system, and each VMS device consists of a GPS unit, a satellite data transmitter, and it provides information on vessel name, location, and activity. The data is sent to a satellite, it's relayed to a center on the ground, and then it's sent to a designated vessel monitoring center. So in Canada, this is already being used. In certain places, some permits require the use of a VMS device on vessels. So this could be something required by fishers for US permits. And this is a screenshot of an online combined IUU vessel list. And it's an example of how it's possible to monitor and track data from federal agencies all over the world and put it in a shareable database. All right, so now let's look at the regulations category. One of the great programs in existence now that would be a great tool to use under HR 69 is rights-based fishing. So in rights-based fishing, each fisher granted a permit has parameters that he must follow, and one of these can be how many fish that he can catch. So catches are regulated, they're tracked, and in this way, fish stocks are more likely to be sustained. So now let's look at the sanctions category. In terms of programs, we could use the data that we get from the programs like VMS and the combined IUU vessel list to measure compliance rates, because the goal of HR 69 is that with stricter sanctions, the compliance rate should go up. So this can be determined by looking at the data that we get from programs like that. So while the solutions proposed by HR 69 are all well-researched concepts, a number of controversies exist about their validity. And the one I want to discuss is the controversy on illegal fishing itself. So there's a wide scientific consensus that illegal fishing decreases stock size, but where scientists disagree is the extent to which stocks are affected and how dire the implications are. And we can see this by looking at the studies themselves. So in 2010, a study concluded that 85% of fish stocks are collapsed or overexploited, while only 2 years later, another study concluded that that number was 58%. So whether it's 85 or 58%, the situation is dire, but exactly how dire is unknown. So if HR 69 is implemented, there are several challenges to measuring if it's been successful at achieving its goals. So for starters, the invasive nature of IUU itself makes it difficult to conduct proper monitoring, and we don't know if we can accurately quantify the impact of IUU fishing. So there's also a lack of standardized monitoring programs. There are gaps in program requirements, and there's disagreements on fish stock measurements, as we just learned. And lastly, the complexity of ecosystems themselves present a problem because their complexity makes it difficult to measure if any changes in stock size result from a decrease in IUU fishing. So in summary, illegal fishing has a number of consequences, and some of the most critical include its effects on a loss of fish stocks, biodiversity, and ecosystem health, as well as erosion and food security. HR 69 intends to combat IUU fishing and stymie its effects on fish stock declines by increasing the monitoring of illegal fishing, the regulations on illegal fishing, and by imposing sanctions. There currently exist a number of programs that can be used as models for programs under HR 69. And lastly, if HR 69 is implemented, measuring its success will always be a difficult proposition. Thank you very much.
Hi, Hi, great job.
Thanks.
I just had a quick question. When you say fish stocks, is there a certain type of fish or certain species that this is focusing on?
We're looking at specifically commercial seafood species. That's what we care about specifically because of food security. So that's what we're looking at.
Another one up here.
Palmer.
And then our third one will be Professor Palmer. Well, we're only going to take one, then we're going to come over to
Thank you.
Hi, I was just wondering, one of your solutions you propose is rights-based fishing, but how is that different from what is currently happening? Is that permit-based fishing? Can you clarify the difference?
Does someone want to take that from my team? Yeah. Holly?
It's that rights-based fishing will be, sometimes it gives each fisherman a quota in their permit itself. So saying this fisherman can get only 3 fish, whereas this one can get 1 fish. This is kind of different than regular fishing, because regular fishing you typically get a permit and then you fish according to that permit. Rights-based fishing is also used more on a local scale, and it's already been used in several states and municipalities. Does that answer your question?
Okay, Professor Palmer gets the last question of this group. Right over here.
He's easy to miss.
Yeah, thank you, Stephanie. So I'm interested. This is domestic legislation,
Okay.
and you talked about a lot of global issues. So I wonder to what extent U.S. law can help affect this problem at a global level.
Yeah? Okay. Go ahead, Alyssa.
There are grants that are associated with the, oh God.
You love it.
There are grants that are associated with the program to help other nations internationally with coming up with better management systems. The bill doesn't necessarily focus on those. It kind of just briefly mentions it. But we're talking only about the United States like as a flag state, and if our ships do go over to other ports, then when they come back over here after fishing, that's when we kind of see them. But I think Inga wants to answer it better.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.